Hello, and welcome back to the Sober Scoop. Today, we're going to be talking about coming out to your family members and friends. And I'm not trying to compare this directly to coming out as, LGBTQ or whatever, but I'm using that word coming out because you do kind of have to, have a sit down and tell these people who maybe didn't even know that you had a drinking problem, that you are now quitting alcohol and getting sober. It is kind of like coming out because you are now identifying as a non-drinker, and it's sort of something that you have to explain to people so they're not confused, I guess, so they're like in the loop with what your new lifestyle is going to look like. And I can smell the comments a mile away, people saying like, what do you care about how people receive the news that you're going to be sober? Well, you know what? I mean, I'm not a people pleaser, but I do have friends and family that I love, and I was nervous to tell them. And I'm not the only one who was nervous about how they were going to phrase this news, because I have received countless questions from people saying like, how do I tell my boyfriend who didn't even know that I had a drinking problem that I'm now going to be sober? How do I tell my family and the people closest to me who love me and care about me and didn't know I was struggling that I actually had a drinking problem and I'm quitting booze? It's hard. It's confusing. And everybody's situation is different. So I'm going to give a very overarching perspective on this as best I can and just recognize that everyone's situation is different. So take what you want from this episode, leave what you don't, and I hope this helps somebody out there. Let's get into the episode. Welcome to the Sober Scoop. This is a judgment-free zone where we talk about how to get sober and stay sober. You're not alone. I hope you feel seen. Quitting alcohol is the best decision I've ever made. Whether you are taking a little hot girl walk or you are sitting back and relaxing and cracking into a cold one, I hope you enjoy the episode. I am cracking into a diet root beer. My favorite, of course. Okay, so I'm going to talk about my situation specifically. So it was just such a wild time right before the date that I chose to finally get sober. Because, as I've talked about in previous episodes, I kind of realized that I might have ADHD, or at least be experiencing some ADHD symptoms. And I kind of realized that and made the connection between that and my drinking, recognizing that I drink sometimes to numb those symptoms. And it was kind of like a 2-for-2 revelation, and that the root of the issue was maybe those ADHD symptoms, along with a number of other things. I started heavily drinking for all sorts of different reasons, which I've talked about in the past. But the revelation of the ADHD and alcohol use and doing so much research on the fact that they are related was kind of a light bulb in my head. And so with quote unquote coming out to my boyfriend at the time, about a week prior to me getting sober, I had talked to my boyfriend about ADHD and how I think I might have it. And I had him listen to this, I guess it was a video. So I had him watch a couple of videos that I discovered. I sent him a couple articles, and I was just basically like, hey, so I think I have ADHD, and I think that I drink to numb the ADHD. And he was like, yeah, sounds like you. I am self-diagnosed. I never went and got a diagnosis, and I won't ever, because for me, just learning coping strategies is more fulfilling for me than like getting on medication or talking to somebody, just for my personal situation. Like, the internet is a beautiful thing, and I've learned amazing coping strategies there. So that's what works for me, and I don't need a diagnosis, but I know how I am, and my symptoms have gotten a lot better in sobriety. But anyways, so my coming out story to my boyfriend was kind of like, I have these ADHD symptoms, and I think that I drink to numb them. And so it was kind of like a 2-for-2. So we talked about the ADHD, and then about a week later, I wish I could remember exactly how I phrased it, but I think I said to him, I'm going to take a break from alcohol. And I remember I went into my shell quite a bit, and I probably didn't talk to him for like 3 days. Of course, we're texting and things like that, but he didn't see me for probably 3 days because I knew that I was in like a vulnerable state, and I knew what I was going through. Like, I knew that I wanted to quit alcohol forever, but to him, he's thinking that I'm taking a break and going on with life as usual. But here I am, like, unable to fall asleep at night, being totally fidgety, experiencing the shakes, experiencing these really strong cravings, and I didn't want him to see me like that. So we maintained a texting relationship for those first few days of my sobriety. And then, eventually once I started feeling better, I saw him again, and I'm like, yeah, still doing well with my break from alcohol, trying these different drinks, getting soda if we go out somewhere, and it's like all good. But then, probably a month into my sobriety, I had a bit of a heart-to-heart with him. And I was just kind of like, I think I'm going to do this forever. Like, I think I'm quitting alcohol. I am going to be a sober person. And he was like, wow, that's so amazing. And although he was probably thinking this all along, he never said it to me. I was the one who came out and said, I think I had a pretty significant alcohol problem. And I started crying, and he, at that point, used that as an opportunity to tell me some things that he's noticed. And basically, it was almost like we were having an intervention without it being an intervention, because I was the one who opened the doors for that. And he said, sometimes you would come over to my place at 11 a.m. already smelling like beer, and I'd be like, okay, she's starting early today. That's what he told me. I'll never forget that, because to me, that was like, oh my God, my cover has been blown. Like, I thought I hid my drinking problem so well, but when he told me that he could smell alcohol on my breath when I came over at 11 a.m., I'm like, oh gosh, this guy knows my secret, basically. And he did know my secret. He also said that there were several times that he came into my car in the passenger seat, and there were beer cans stuffed under the seat. He's talked about the trash situation, which I thought I was covering up so well. All the things that I was covering up well, it turns out he noticed a lot of those things and was just nice enough not to bring it up to me. And I think if he would have brought it up to me, I would have been so mortified that I probably would have drank more. Like, him bringing those things up to me would not have helped me get sober. The only thing that could help me get sober was me finally deciding that I was going to quit alcohol and that I likely had an alcohol problem. So anyways, we're having this heart to heart, and he's telling me some things, and I'm telling him some things. I'm telling him things that he didn't even know I did. I'm telling him that I started my morning with a few Coors Lights pretty often. I told him I drank during work hours. I kind of just let it all out. I mean, there's some things that he'll never know, but I let it all out, and it felt really, really good to have that off my chest. So if you're thinking about having the talk with your partner or your family member or your best friend or whoever, like, that's a hard conversation, and I would say wait to do it until you're ready. I waited till I was a month sober, till I was feeling better about myself and my situation, and I was feeling confident that I could stay sober. Then I chose to have that conversation. But once I did, that was the best conversation I've ever had, probably. And I've told people that over DM who've asked me, like, how do I tell my boyfriend that I have an alcohol problem? Everybody's situation is different, so I can't tell you exactly what to say. But when you do have that conversation and you are honest and filter free, it is the biggest relief. I actually can't even think of anything that is such a just weight off your chest. I mean, in my situation, I was keeping this secret and every day basically living a double life. And then to just let that out with him was incredible. It was the best feeling ever. So that was kind of my coming out story with my boyfriend. So basically, I told him that I was going to take a break from alcohol And then a month in, I had the talk of like why I'm quitting and how I actually had a problem with alcohol. So that was that. Then with my family, coming out to my family as a sober person, let's see what I can remember from that. So I got sober June 20th, and we go on an annual family vacation on the last weekend in June. So I had been sober for less than 2 weeks, and I show up to this family vacation, which is usually my favorite place to drink, right? And they notice, of course, that I'm not drinking. And that was a shock. That was weird. The conversation was not that I'm quitting alcohol forever. It was that I'm not drinking right now and I'm taking a break. That was the initial conversation. That's how I opened it up to people. That's how I introduced this situation to my family. And they definitely didn't understand that I had a drinking problem of any kind because, like I said, I'd lived away from my family for the last decade. They don't see me every day. And so they especially wouldn't have had a clue about my issues with alcohol. And I was very high functioning. Like I was still very successful, still doing a lot of cool things. And so I think for them, like immediately coming out and saying, I have a drinking problem and I'm quitting alcohol would have been a bit shocking. So I more just said, I'm taking a break. That's how I warmed them up to the idea. And then I remember at the end of that vacation, my dad told me like, wow, that was really cool that you didn't drink that whole time. Like, I'm super proud of you. And that was a special moment that I remember. And then I went home to Seattle for another trip later, probably in like August or something. So at that point, I'm sober for like 2 months. And I'm pretty set in my ways. Like, I think that I'm going to be sober forever. And so this time I come home and they're like, you're still sober? Wow. Like, they probably weren't expecting that. They were probably expecting me to take a week off or 2 weeks off and get right back to it. But here I am a couple months later seeing them, and I'm still sober. So that was a bit of a surprise to them, I guess. But the conversation that I remember having, like it was yesterday, was about our cruise. So we were planning a family cruise for December. And at this point, they've noticed that I've been sober for a couple of months, and my dad asked me, so does this mean you're going to be sober for the cruise? Because who could do a cruise sober? That would be crazy. And I said, yeah, I'm going to be sober for the cruise. And at that point, I was pretty proud of myself because I wasn't afraid to say that I was quitting alcohol like forever, that I am a sober person now. Like, I'm not taking a break. I'm not currently not drinking. I am a non-drinker. I don't drink anymore. So of course I won't be drinking on the cruise. And that was kind of a special moment. Just a quick little foresight here. When I did go on that cruise afterwards, I had like this amazing conversation with my dad where he was like, that was incredible. I'm so proud of you for staying sober that entire time. And he was just really proud of me. And that was just such a special moment that I had with my dad. So that was really cool. But yeah, so that was my kind of coming out story. Sorry, I keep calling it a coming out story. I hope that's not like offensive, but you are kind of coming out as sober. So I don't know what else to call it. So hopefully nobody gets offended by that. Okay. Like, I don't mean it with ill intent or to downplay the significance of coming out as gay or something to your family. I know that that's very difficult. Not even trying to compare the two. I'm just using the same terminology. So hopefully that doesn't bother anybody. Moving right along. So that's how I came out to my boyfriend and to my family. And all I have to say is that you have to look at your situation and whatever feels right to you. Whatever you're comfortable telling your family or friends in that moment is fine. Do whatever you have to do to make yourself feel comfortable in your sobriety. And then later you can have more of a deep heart to heart with the people in your life. At least that's how it went for me. Like, I said I was taking a break, and then after a while I said, I'm sober. Like, I'm not drinking anymore. And all I can say is that as scary as that moment is, it is the best feeling ever to definitively say you're a non-drinker. Like, I don't drink anymore, to the people that love you the most. It's really special, and people will receive it differently. I had one person in my life totally shocked and I guess surprised and taken aback by my announcement of sobriety. And they were like, well, you're going to drink at my bachelorette, right? And I'm like, no, like, I don't drink anymore. That is period. Forever. Like, I don't drink. I got a lot of questions from that person about, are you going to drink at this? Will you drink at this? Basically, like, why are you doing this? You're going to do this forever? Doesn't make sense. This person even immediately said, are you an alcoholic? Like, do you have a problem? And at that point, I was telling this person, like, really early on in my sobriety that I was getting sober. And I didn't want to call myself an alcoholic. In fact, I still don't like calling myself an alcoholic because I believe that I beat alcohol. Like, I won. And so I don't want to continue to call myself an alcoholic, which implies that you currently have a problem with alcohol. Like, because I quit, I didn't want to call myself an alcoholic. And I wasn't going to AA. And this person, was used to the AA environment because they had a family member who did AA. So anyway, wasn't as well received as I would have hoped. But they have since apologized for that interaction, and were actually like really, really nice about it. So, that was my only like negative quote unquote coming out that I had. But it ended up being totally fine. And they now listen to this podcast every single episode. So hello. I don't mean to call you out, but I love you, and it's all good. Anyway, moving right along. Once you're so sure of yourself and sure of your sobriety, it doesn't really matter how other people react because you know your situation and you know what you're going to do. And I do think that it becomes a bit more easy to grasp as the receiver of this information once they find out that you actually had a problem. And that's really hard to say to people. Like, I had a drinking problem. But once I said that to the people closest to me, they all understood so much more. And I think that moment is really special because when people don't know that you have a drinking problem and they hear you're quitting drinking, they're like, okay, but why? Is it for health reasons? Is it to lose weight? Is it to work harder? Or I don't know. They're trying to like process in their brains why you would be quitting alcohol when they don't think you have a drinking problem. So when you do come out and say that you have a drinking problem and that's why you're quitting alcohol, it becomes more like tangible for these people. They're like, oh, okay, got it. And then they're like on your side and rooting for you and there for you, which is a really special moment. So if you're on the fence about telling somebody in your life that you have a drinking problem or you had a drinking problem or whatever, like, I would err on the side of like telling them. Go ahead and tell them because you will only feel better after having done so. And I know that it's scary, but after telling each person that I had a bad relationship with alcohol or was like heading down a bad path, after every time I had that conversation, I felt this giant sigh of relief and I felt so much better. And people kind of being in the loop and understanding you and supporting you is a lot better feeling than people being like confused as to why you're doing this or unsure if you'll do it forever. Like, saying that you are a sober person, you are a non-drinker because you had a drinking problem is the easiest way forward. I mean, it's so honest, it's so raw, and I think people receive that really well. So the last thing I wanted to touch on is just like coming out to friends, sharing with your friends that you're now sober. With all my friends, other than like that one that I had a little bit of pushback from, it was so well received. And you know what? I think my friends saw my alcohol problem more than my boyfriend did. This might seem odd, but I think I tried to hide my alcohol problem from my boyfriend more than I tried to hide it from my friends. Because I didn't really care if my friends disliked me for drinking so much. Like, I didn't care if they saw me as a heavy drinker. But my boyfriend, I did care if he saw me as a heavy drinker. At least me personally, that's kind of how it was. And so I think the close friends that I had in my life that I told that I was quitting drinking, they were like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I didn't have to tell them that I had an alcohol problem. They probably immediately understood why I would be getting sober. So a lot of those friendship conversations were really easy to have. It was the family and the boyfriend ones that were more difficult, and then just that one little friend hiccup that I had. But it was all good. So it's a scary thing to share with somebody that you have an alcohol problem and, like, yeah, come out as a sober person. It's hard. It really is. And I feel you on that. If you ever want to DM me and, like, brainstorm ideas for how you can tell somebody in your life, feel free, because it's hard and I wish I could have talked to somebody about it. If I could redo it, I'd probably go about things a little bit differently. But that was my process and it worked and it's all good now. Everything is fine and dandy and I'm so happy, and I have all their support, which is really cool. So, easier said than done, but, like, try not to be too afraid of telling the people in your life that you're getting sober, because they ultimately want the best for you. And if this is what's best for you, they will support you 100%. And just selfishly, like, it is the biggest weight off your chest you will ever feel when you share this information with people. So, I think just in life in general, don't be afraid to be vulnerable and show your weaknesses. I think we're so scared to show our, not so amazing sides of ourselves. And, like, yeah, harboring a drinking problem for so many years is not really my most incredible quality, but it is what it is. And when I opened up and shared that with people, it was well received for the most part and a weight off my chest. So be honest and raw, and good luck to you. You have to do it sometime, so you may as well just get it over with, and you will thank yourself later. So thank you for listening to today's episode, and I will see you for the next one. Bye.